Hello YouTube, it's Ryan here with Hobbies Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another manga review. Today we're going to be looking at the second part of Bleach. We're going to be looking at Soul Society, the Sneak Entry arc, which is chapter 71 to 118. This is the first portion of the Soul Society arc, or the second portion, depending on how you kind of look at it. I think technically speaking, the most correct answer is that it is the second part of Soul Society, and it's the first part of Soul Society that is in the Soul Society realm, right? Because the first part was in the human realm almost exclusively, right? So, yeah, I'm going to skip over the book facts because it's the same thing as the other day. So, feel free to go watch the first episode of this Tite Kubo Bleach read-through. I've already done a review for Burn the Witch, and I will eventually read Zombie Powder as well. So, yeah, let's jump right into the premise. And this part of the story is mostly about arriving in the Soul Society and trying to enter the Serate, or the inner city, the portion where the high-class people and the Soul Reapers live, right? And in order to try to save Rukia. Of course, they don't actually get to do that part of the story in this section of the plot, but they do manage to at least enter the Serate eventually. There really is no further division here. It's mostly all about that, and the division is mostly in which group of characters you follow as they're getting into the Serate. So, yeah, they begin the story in the plot line. The plot line starts with the characters stuck in the in-between place. They're kind of in this weird purgatory section, because we did get a diagram, I think at the end of the last arc, where it was this circle, and around this circle is a band, and this band is purgatory, and from the circle, Earth, into purgatory, or into the Soul Society, you have to cross purgatory, and you have to not look back. You have to try your best to not get stuck there, and eventually make it to Soul Society. If you get stuck in purgatory, you're never going to be able to leave, right? So they manage to get through this in-between place. They get chased by this locomotive engine that looks like a like it's made of like muscles or something. It's really fucking weird. It's really, really odd, but it was cool. And they get into the Rukongai, I think is what it's called. The Rukongai is the poor district of the Soul Society, right? So they get there and they immediately rush to try to get into the Serate, but this set of gates falls from the sky, like this really interesting kind of set of dominoes, and they cover the whole inner city with this wall. And so they have to battle the guard at the gate, who is a giant. Now, it's not really explained where these extra supernatural creatures come from. Like, he's just a giant, and there's no reason why he's a giant. And I guess it doesn't really have to be explained, but it's weird to have this, like, other mythological creature with no explanation, where everyone else has followed a very clear, like, ghost and ghost-related kind of, supernatural line of thought. And just random giants is kind of odd, right? So, I don't know. Doesn't really end up mattering. Ichigo and he fight, and when Ichigo beats him, the gate guard is honorable enough to open the gate for them. But as he does that, this guy, I think Gin is his name, who is this like Orochimaru-esque looking character, shows up and actually hurts the gate guard in order to have him close the gate again, and manages to push everyone back out into the Rukongai. And so they get help from the people of the slums after Orihime, without thought, starts healing this guy. And the people from the slums realize that Ichigo and his group of friends are not bad people, right? So they are, going to try to again. But then the people of the slums, and actually Yoriichi, ask the people of the slums if they know where Kukaku is. And we don't know who Kukaku is at this moment, but we do eventually find out that she is another of these Soul Reaper-esque group of people that are not the standard Soul Society residents, but are not also Soul Reapers. Very similar to Yorichi, very similar to Uruhara. And she actually is a master at fireworks. And so they're going to need her help in order to get into the Serete. Before that happens, actually, Ichigo meets this guy called Ganju, and they start off badly, and they fight, and it's ridiculous because once they manage to get to Kukaku's place, they learn that Ganju is her brother, right? So there's some element of comedy there that ensues out of Ichigo and this guy fighting, and Ichigo has this sort of relationship with a lot of different characters. He had it initially with Uryu, and he kind of still does. There's a lot of little funny kind of interactions here where Ichigo just kind of makes fun of Uryu for something he does. And then he has this with Ganju, and eventually he will have this relationship with Renji as well, which is one of the main characters that showed up to take Rukia back to Soul Society at the end of the last arc. So, yeah. They have a mini training arc where they learn to infuse their spirit energy into the sphere and control it to create this bubble around each other or around themselves in order to simulate a cannonball. And Kukaku is going to shoot them out of this cannon in this spirit cannonball so they can go into the Serete from above the gate and manage to pierce the spiritual shell, the spiritual dome that protects it from entries like this, right? So it's really ridiculous, but it's a really cool plan, and it works really well. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. After that, it is mostly just battle after battle after battle, and I'm not really going to get into the specifics because mostly the battles are just really interesting set pieces, but they are not really the crux of like the important aspect of the story. Mostly the fights just lead to in-between moments where characters learn about each other and explain things to each other. And we just kind of understand why Ichigo is here saving Rukia when he really has only been her friend for like 2 months. And their friendship has mostly been a work situation, right? So, yeah. The first battle is Ichigo versus Ikaku. Then Ganju versus Yumichika, who are... Ikaku and Yumichika are part of the 11th company. They are the battle-oriented company of the Soul Reapers, and those two interact with Ichigo and Ganju at the beginning of this second part of the arc, and Ichigo takes on Ikaku, and it's just a straight up brawl. And then Ganju and Yumichika have more of a thoughtful kind of fight. It's a little bit more like cat and mouse, and both of these fights are pretty fun. We also get to learn a little bit about the Gotei 13 politics, or the court squad guards. I can't remember the exact name that they use in English, but I'm just going to call them the Gotei 13 because that's easier to say. And it's not like, because the English title feels like a like a tongue twister, like the Special Court Guard something divisions or something like that. I don't remember. But basically we learn that there's captains, there's sub-captains, then there's generally an organization, a hierarchical organization via their seat or how high they place in the company, and then they're divided into squads, and there's a lot of subdivisions, and all of the captains are of a certain level, and they're all led by one specific captain who is the general. He is Yamamoto, and he's this old, gnarly, bearded, Master Roshi looking kind of guy. And very cool. So, yeah, they learned that there's these intruders, and they had a specific name for them. I just can't remember the name of it. Or, it'd be like if a Japanese person calls you a gaijin. They have, like, a name for rogue souls that enter Soul Society, but I forgot what the title is. But it's not that important. So they prepare to deal with the intruders, and actually, at the same time that they're preparing to deal with the intruders, there's also a murder plot line that gets introduced that leads into the second part of the story. So most of the Gotei 13 politics are primarily about dealing with the intruders, but also secondarily about this murder situation that happens, right? So, yeah. After the initial introduction to the 13 court guard squads, we get to see Orihime and Uryu fighting Jirobo, who is the younger brother of the giant that was the gate guard, if I remember correctly. And they actually fight Jirobo, but it's mostly just Uryu. Orihime kind of falls back in the same way that kind of Sakura falls into this kind of thing where she just can't fight as well as everyone else. But in Orihime, I think it's a much more meaningful kind of situation than with Sakura, because I mean, well, it's not important, I guess, so I won't really go into it. But Orihime is a healer, and she has a actual emotional aversion to violence, but she will do it if necessary. And she is mostly being protected by Uryu during this part of the story. Uryu beats Jirobo really, really fast in a very cool way, and I quite like him a lot. Then we get introduced to Hanataro, who is this guy from the fourth company. He's really low on the totem pole, and he's kind of this loser character, but also is like a nice guy, and he becomes friendly with Rukia, right? So he actually ends up helping Ichigo and Ganju at some point. Then we get to see Ichigo versus Renji, and this is the what I would consider one of the major battles of this arc. And Renji is part of the sixth company, I think. And of course, he was the character that showed up to take Rukia back alongside her brother Byakuya Kuchiki. But Ichigo and Renji have a really good, really interesting battle. And I think this is the first time that we learn about Bankai, right? Because I do think, or maybe not, maybe that's not the case. No. This is when we first initially learn about Shikai, or where it's explained to us properly. I don't remember, but there's something that happens here with Ichigo and Renji where they learn, or Ichigo learns, about the different levels of power that these swords have. And I do think it is because Renji uses something special about his Zabimaru, but I don't remember exactly what it is. But, their fight is good. It ends with Renji losing, and then actually asking Ichigo to help Rukia, because at the end of the day, Renji was friends with Rukia for a long time when they were children. They came up together in the Soul Society Soul Reaper school, and eventually Rukia left him because she was adopted by this family, and Renji decided that the best thing to do was to let her go and let her follow this new path that opened up to her, so that she could be better off than him. And he had been kind of hiding his feelings about the situation until now, right? So yeah, then we cut away to the Gotei 13. Hitsugaya, or actually, what's his name? Toshiro, is this little short guy, but he's a very powerful character, is together with Momo, and they find out that her captain Aizen has been murdered. And obviously, because there's a murder and then there's intruders at the same time, everyone guesses that the intruders are part of the people that killed Aizen, but we all know that's not the case. But it is still kind of a meaningful kind of situation that occurs. Then we have Chad facing off against a captain. He faces off against Shunsui, who is a very cool, very suave, badass kind of guy. But he is not very serious. However, he does manage to basically destroy Chad in a single attack, and it's very, very badass. I really enjoyed it. It was a very short but very good fight as well. Very cool situation. And then the biggest, most major fight here is Ichigo versus Kenpachi. Kenpachi is the leader of the 11th Company, and he is someone that has so much spiritual pressure, but has actually never used either the Shikai or the Bankai of his sword. So his sword is still unnamed. It is just this very basic loser katana, and he fights Ichigo, and it's a really good fight. It's really interesting. It's really powerful. Kenpachi is just an insane guy. He's a machine. He starts off, and then we notice that he has a bunch of ways to minimize his power, and he slowly removes them, and Ichigo is overpowered, but then Ichigo manages to turn the tables because Ichigo has this insane spiritual pressure as well, and it's a really good battle. Ichigo does end up losing at the end, but Kenpachi is happy to have fought him and is had fun, and so he goes off to do something else and leaves Ichigo alone so that next time he comes back stronger and they can have an even better fight. And it was a really good fight. I really enjoyed this one a lot. So yeah, eventually Ichigo arrives at Rukia's cell, and then he has a standoff with Byakuya. But before they can actually start fighting, Yoruichi shows up, and she puts a stop to Ichigo. She basically knocks him out and then takes him away after promising Byakuya that in 3 days' time they will face off again and Ichigo will be able to beat him. And so it's a really cool thing. We basically end the chapter or end the arc in that section. And what happens is that, Ichigo is going to have to train in order to unleash his Bankai at the beginning of the next arc. So yeah, in terms of world building, socioeconomic politics of the Soul Society is very briefly mentioned. We do learn that, there's the Serete, the main city, and then the slums, and the slums are divided into 80 districts, and the higher the number, the shittier the district is. So District 1 is basically normal people, and District 80 is basically just a criminal underground kind of city, and it's really, really bad. I remember... if I remember correctly, Rukia and Renji are from District 79, and so is Kenpachi. Or Kenpachi might have been from 80, I don't know. But they're from a really low district, and they're some of the few people that managed to crawl out of this place into being part of the Soul Society, being part of the Soul Reapers. So, yeah, we learn a little bit about Sunpak Toes, and we get the setup for the Bankai. And as well as a little bit of development there as well. And, a lot of the politics of the Goatee 13 and how each of the captains kind of dislikes each other. And there's, different kind of levels of relationships between all of these characters. And it's really, really good stuff. So art-wise, there's a huge step up. There's a meaningful development of the art style. Kukaku and Ganju are not introduced in the early art style like Renji was at the end of the human realm, the substitute Shinigami arc. They are clearly in the current style of Tite Kubo, and they were really, really good characters. We also get to see that his female character design game has gone up a lot because Momo, Rankiku, Yoruichi's human form, who else? Anohana, the lady that's in charge of the fourth company. All of these female characters are significantly better drawn than the initial designs and even the current designs for Orihime and Tatsuki and Rukia. So really good stuff there. Rangiku is probably the most attractive female character design that is present. But it's very interesting to see the way he draws her compared to all of the other female characters. And it's really well done. The art style definitely took a giant leap here. In terms of fan service, there's very little, but there is still a little bit here and there. I definitely think there's more than in the previous arc because Kukaku is a very fan servicey kind of character. The way she poses, the way she's dressed. Rangiku, very similarly, is also one of these types of characters. And so even if there isn't really much going on, there is still some here and there. So yeah, in terms of a rating, this is a 4 out of 5. It was a really great chapter. There was some really great fights. And I really had a fun time. But again, it just doesn't really manage to raise itself. And at this point, we are past the 100 chapter mark. And I do think that at this point, we can kind of compare it clearly to the first 100-ish chapters of the other big three. And again, this is still the most easily enjoyed, like the most kind of popcorn movie-esque. At this point in Naruto, I think it's halfway through the Genin exams, right? The tuning exams. So that's a little bit more difficult because they're introducing Gaara and all of these other nations, and so there's a lot of world building there that isn't really present here. And at this point in the in One Piece, we are getting out of the prologue, out of East Blue, and getting into the Grand Line, into Paradise. So I would definitely say that this is still the easiest to read, and it's the most enjoyable in that sense, because it is so easy to just kind of pick up an issue or a volume, a chapter, whatever you want to call it, and just get into the story and continue reading really, really easily. You know, there is a major plot, there is a development of things going on, but it is mostly just a string of really cool fights with a lot of emotional moments in between. And I think it's still the most enjoyable out of the three in this kind of early phase. But as the story progresses, I'm not necessarily sure that it's going to be able to keep up, because Naruto gets way better. And One Piece obviously grows by leaps and bounds after the prologue section. So yeah, I don't know. Really good stuff. It just doesn't really measure up to the other two in my mind. And in and of itself, it's just really enjoyable, but it's not really top tier yet. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Bleach. Soul Society, the Sneak Entry Arc, Chapter 71 through 118. Next time, we'll look at the rest of Soul Society, which is the Rescue Arc, 118 to 183. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know your thought, and thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.